So before I go forward, let me take a second and start to summarize some of what we would call the vectors into hard surface sculpting. And by that I mean the features that you're going to be using. So we had a quick little demo of how this all works, but let's do a little bit of a lecture and start talking about the components themselves. So I'm going to say vectors, and that's for the math heads, and then we can say features as well. Vectors is, I like to use that term because it helps us understand how ZBrush uses that grid. So loose, controlled, hard surface, soft surface, they have a feature that's designed to make a beeline through to some kind of action. So I'd call it a vector. So what are the features of hard surface? We saw panel loops. What other features are there for the hard surface system? Remember now, if you're teaching ZBrush, you're going to want to have this an entire, probably 2 lectures on hard surface. So we want to get these features laid out so we're organized and ready to present. So somebody said the clip, the trim, right? What other features are part of this? Crease, that's a brush-based, but then there's also crease up here in the geometry. And then there's the polished brushes. Okay, the trim brush, somebody said the slice brush, that's really important. Okay, I'm going to add a couple. There's extrude. Okay, and a lot of people don't know about extrude because it's kind of hidden. So you have to make a point of demoing how that works, basically using transpose. But there is no, extrude feature per se. There's definitely the insert brushes, and so insert mesh is really important. And then there's one that I want to also mention, polish by feature. And that's one that's going to really highlight, we're going to highlight that today. So polish by feature. Dynamesh is also really important. And also ZRemesher. Those are all really, really important. But let's break these up a little bit. These are kind of features, although the insert mesh is really a brush, so let's move that down. This is in the deformation palette. These are brushes. Brushes. Features. I'm going to put it out here. Deformation. This polish by feature can't be underestimated. This is really important. If you watch Paul Gabry do demonstrations, you'll see him use this frequently because they're trying to automate the whole smooth surface thing. Okay, but within brushes, there are a couple of categories, and so I really want to put a call out to these guys, the Control plus Shift brushes. Slice, clip, and trim, as well as select. So this is how I break it down. I break it down in terms of there are a series of features I need to make sure people are aware of. There's some really core hooks, like what is Pixologic really depending on you learning. Polish by feature is one of those things where they are really depending on you learning that. In order for your workflow to flow real smoothly. Okay, then we have, of course, brushes. So the normal sculpting brushes with the normal feature set. But very specifically, you'll see them developing the Control-Shift brushes. Slice, clip, trim, select. So those got some updates in ZBrush 4 R6, specifically trim. But then there were some other enhancements, such as being able to use these brushes with partially hidden mesh, things like that. So with those 1, 2, 3, 4 categories in mind, we can keep moving forward. And then just remember, we've really looked at panel loops, and that's it. So there is a ton more stuff for us to cover. Now, there's one other thing that I want to mention. I'm going to clear this screen right now. These are kind of the vectors into the hard surface system. But there are a couple of, I don't know how you would phrase it, but I might say there are forces, or there's things that we have to do. So keep in mind that masks, I wouldn't put that as a feature. That's a vector, but a mask is just a continual tool you use, groups, and visibility. Every other feature that you use, the extrude, panel loops, any of those guys, will all be depending on masks, groups, and visibility as kind of the core part of their vocabulary. Mask by edge, there's a whole bunch of stuff. This guy right here, this edge loop masked border, in some workflows that is incredibly essential. But I don't really, well, I should put that as a feature. I would put that as a feature right next to panel loops. Okay. Now, we've looked at that. There's a lecture. So let me answer one question, and then I'm going to get into the next demo. So what's the main difference between panel loops and groups loops? And in fact, we can make that really crystal clear here by just doing panel loops to these different pieces. So the basic idea is that groups loops creates segments of your segmented parts of your model. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Panel loops creates segmented parts of your model. That's the fundamental difference between groups loops and panel loops. In segmenting your model, they also throw in some extra features like bevel. They didn't have to do that. And then also the regroup panel options and the polish options, because they didn't have to do that either. So it's just an evolution of extraction. So they threw some cool things in there. Does that answer your question, Means? Let me undo that and go back to panel loops. Okay. Panel loops separates the model. Yes. And in fact, we're going to see that when we get to the vehicle demo, because a lot of tutorials that you see really focus on panel loops. But if you're creating a car, you don't want to panel loop everything. So panel loops has a limitation. And we need to start to find other ways to do things. But panel loops definitely grew out of extract. It was 100% an evolution of extraction. Okay. Michael.